The Frankenstein-Dracula Chess opening. Yes, you heard that right. That's the name of the opening. It's not just a cheap trick. It's played at the high levels of chess. It's very, very dangerous. Arguably the craziest and most dangerous chess opening out there. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Frankenstein-Dracula Chess opening. Okay, let's start this crazy opening. All right, so it comes out of a very normal opening, ironically, and that's just the Vienna. So very common chess opening, so you're very likely to see this position. You know, it's not uncommon at all. So after bishop c4, now white has to play bishop c4 here. This is the start of it, and this is the more obvious part. It's a two-part gambit. That's why I think it's called the Frankenstein-Dracula gambit, but no one really knows. But this is how I interpret it. This is the first part of it, and this is the Frankenstein gambit. And this is the more obvious one. One is not the dangerous one. This one starts the gambit, and this one is what starts the sharp variation that provokes or induces white to play the next move, which I'll get to in a second. Now, if white takes here, you might be wondering why did black give his knight away. This is kind of a known, this is known theory in these king-pawn openings. You can just play d5 and fork the knight and bishop, and after bishop d3, you just take, and black is completely fine, and white does not like to play that. White does not like to do that. So after this, the best move is queen h5, actually. So queen h5 is the sharpest and best move, and now the knight is being attacked, and let me explain. First of all, we're threatening checkmate, or white's threatening checkmate, so that's like a basic scholar's checkmate, right? But the knight is also being attacked. Why, might you say? Not because of knight takes, because we have d5, but because if we try to block here, queen takes, and after we block, we can just simply take the knight. And now you might be thinking, well, I can just do this and follow it up, but now there's nothing guarding that pawn because we don't have a queen anymore. So the knight is actually threatened in this position as well as checkmate. So if checkmate is threatened and our knight's threatened, logically, we'd have to move our knight to defend checkmate so we can defend both things at once, which is the best move. Look at that. Knight d6 defends the knight, defends the mate, and hits the bishop for good measure. White's going to probably play bishop b3. It's the best move. And here is the real part of the gambit. Here is the Dracula part of the gambit. And it's not very obvious that it's a gambit. I'll explain. Knight c6. The reason why this is a gambit is because this allows the move knight b5. And eventually, because you play knight c6, by force, you're going to give up your rook. So if you played, let's say, a6, which is fine here, this, you would not gambit anything. However, knight c6, this is the real part of the gambit. This is the real gambit. The first one was just like a pseudo one. It was a joke. This one's for real. Okay, so it allows knight b5. Now, what's the threat behind knight b5? Well, the threat is white's threatening checkmate, but this knight's defending. So if white takes, that's not good. Removing the defender, checkmate. So what do we do now? The only move we can play here to not lose the game and lose material is g6. G6 stops the mate and hits the queen. Now if white takes, doesn't matter because we're blocking checkmate. So what does white do here? After g6, white comes back to f3, reinstilling the threat. So we play f5 here, blocking the threat. And now white relentlessly plays queen d5, reinstilling the threat of checkmate on f7. So the only thing we can do now to block, the only piece that can block this is now the queen. So, but the queen is also defending c7. So we have to take the queen out to f6, or e7 you can also play, but f6 is a little bit more active, to defend f7, which relinquishes, protection of c7, which leads to loss of a whole entire rook. And the craziest part of all this is all theory. This is all a part of our master plan. We want this. So what do we do here? We play b6. The idea behind b6 is we want the bishop to come to b7. where it lands on a great diagonal, sets up a discovery on the queen, and also is preparing to capture the knight. Okay, so let's say white makes a normal move, and this is very typical and probably the best move. Okay, here's our plan. Now the white knight is trapped, but we got to remember the knight took a rook, so white's up a whole rook. But now the knight's trapped, so the best move is to take, because if you're going to lose your knight, you might as well get a pawn out of it. But we got our piece back, but we're still down the exchange and a pawn. Now, if white just castles, here's the big payoff of this whole gambit. We would be winning on the spot with knight d4 because, believe it or not, the queen is completely trapped and has no squares to go to. There's nowhere the queen can go. Notice that the queen cannot take the bishop because of the knight, and white has a resignable position after all that. That's the big payoff of the gambit. If white in this variation is playing super accurately and plays the best moves, but doesn't see that. But let's give white some credit. Let's say white doesn't see it, or does see it. They have two options, d3, f3. F3 is more common. Now we would still play knight d4. We hit the queen twice, and the queen has to move. And now we take the knight, because now we're forcing white to give up the right to castle. So the king is not safe here. It's in the center of the board. And now we would just follow it up with f4. Why would we follow it up with f4? Because one of the main threats in this position, we're still in theory, by the way, is white wants to come here and skewer the queen to the king. We don't want that, so we want to stop that, but we also want to take up space and be aggressive, so we're going to play f4. And now we are going to start a kingside attack. That's our basic strategy. That's our overall strategy for black. And here, if white starts making some normal moves here, we're winning the game. This would actually trap the queen again if white just starts making normal developing moves. But let's give white some credit. Let's say he just, finds some escape squares for his queen. We just keep on attacking. If the queen comes here, again, it's lost. The queen would have to come to f1 here, and this is an absolutely miserable position. But anyway, like I was saying, the big payoff is winning the queen on d5. But if he plays in this position, if he sees that his queen's he's going to lose his queen, instead of castling, he plays the best move, knight f3. We still have this position that we want to get to. And the overall strategy, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen because white still has so many options here. But at worst case scenario, we get to this position, which is basically completely even. In fact, Stockfish can't even really evaluate this properly, but it's even-ish. And we have a great chance to win the game still because we have a nice king side attack here, and we can just play it like this. And that's our general strategy. And our king is safe. White's king is not safe. Anyway, that's the Frankenstein-Dracula Gambit. If you like the video, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future crazy content like this. And if you like the video, also make sure you check out this video. Also very helpful. And get out of here. Go play some chess.